Okay. All right, we're gonna get started with our resort tax. We have all of our members present. We just did introductions, so welcome, new members. Glad to have you guys here. It's been a little while. Part of, part of what I will do just quickly for you guys is just give a little bit of history of the Resort Tax Committee and how we ended up here, kind of what we do, and just a little bit of some of our guiding principle documents. And I am going to share my screen here now. If I can. I'm okay to being recorded. Share screen. Zoom, start broadcast. Did it ask you if I was allowed to do it?
No, I already made you co-host, so it should. Your iPad, you may have to have the.
Oh, here it comes. It's just thinking. It's just coming. It's thinking. All right. There we go. We're going to start here with this.
What's scary is prior to that change, any participant in any meeting could have started to sharing their screen without any. No potential problem there.
Got it. All right.
So many pranks.
I know. Can I get rid of this?
Do you want me to get rid of that?
Okay. I was just thinking if I could get rid of the little thing in the corner, but I can't, so. All right, so just quick, this is a presentation we did to council in June of 2022, in case that's not blatantly obvious. There we go. What happened with the resort tax is in 2019, we formed a committee to do resort tax renewal. We knew the resort tax was coming up for renewal, and we wanted to ensure that it would continue, essentially. And there was some, I don't want to say some skepticism and some resistance in the community to the resort tax, and that there was a lot of, I think what we determined was misunderstanding on how the resort tax money has been spent. There was kind of this lore that the resort tax money had all been wasted. And one of the things as this resort tax renewal committee that we did was we went and we dug into the numbers and essentially found that it hadn't been wasted. There was probably, less than 1% of it had been for expenses that maybe, were not ideal, let's just put it. But it was a very low percentage. And most of the money had been spent on exactly what it was what was supposed to be spent on. The primary expenditure, and I think maybe, was that it was spent on water and sewer. And that's about $6.5 million in water and sewer, it shows there, a little over $2 million in streets and $1 million in parks, and about $500,000 in police. And then $180,000 for Broadway lights. And so that's where the money had gone. But this kind of $6.5 million that went into water and sewer wasn't visible to anybody. And so they couldn't see it, they couldn't touch it, they didn't see the results of when they bought a pizza that 3% went to something tangible. But what it did do was drastically update the water and sewer system, and it also helped to reduce having to really skyrocket water and sewer rates, which needed to come up regardless, but that this really helped us build the infrastructure and has come a long way and been good. I'm not going to go over resort tax collection growth because I'm going to show that in a second here. But I do want to talk about the survey results for a second, because we spent a lot of time talking to the community and trying to connect with the community and saying, hey, what is it that you want? And some of this is a product of a moment in time, right? Because what was important to the community, 4 years ago, 5 years ago at this point, may not necessarily be what is essential today. And so we'll talk about that in terms of trying to truth this again. But the things that really came high were streets and sidewalks, upgraded infrastructure, stormwater improvements, park and trail construction and maintenance, which prior to 2020, we could not spend resort tax on maintenance, tourism infrastructure, and a pool. That was, really what was strong. The other thing that this next section, snow plowing, water and sewer, community service, fire and EMS, and economic development actually had very good results. And then kind of on the bottom where folks were not excited about it, and some of these were shocking to us, believe it or not, property tax relief was not high on the list of where people wanted the resort tax. They wanted to see the resort tax be spent on things that benefited the community as a whole. Workforce housing, police and protective services did not rank well. Again, that might have been a moment in time. Marketing to increase resort tax revenue. And then these ones were really kind of pretty not. And the one that surprised me a little is because if you look at the number 2, talks about an upgraded infrastructure, and the number 16 is city buildings. So they wanted the infrastructure that the community used, but not necessarily things that had to do with city services really ranked pretty low. Local event fundraising grants was really kind of a non-starter.
Gee, are you going to ever use this one again?
What's that?
Do you ever use this presentation again? I mean, you're using it again today.
No, probably not.
Okay, because there's just 2 ends in enforcement.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. No, that's helpful. Yeah, I'll try to remember to fix that, but I may not use this again.
Right.
But I might reuse a piece of it, so they could be, right? And then I've got actual expenditures and budget requests up, but I'm not going to go over that here because I'm going to switch to this one. So this has to do with our current expenditures, and I'm just going to go right to the big graph for a second here, this big chart, because it gives you an idea of where the resort tax has gone since 2020 when that change was voted in. Still, what you would see is, and some of this is the stormwater project is 1% as a 1% tax, or by guarantee 25% of what people pay in resort tax. So, it should say it. The reason it shows at 28.4%, if you can see that little thing, is because the way I did stormwater is I just did it on collections because all of that money is going into that project as opposed to what they've actually spent. But you can see that still water, sewer, storm sewer is 50% of this, and in the end, those other pieces start to get a little bit small. But that orange one is streets operation and maintenance, and then streets capital improvement, and then the pool, and then parks, and then law enforcement, and some administrative expense, which at some point we are going to have to talk about. So this is where the money has gone. And that total is about $4.2 million right now. So we have not finished off this budget year, but what we've seen is a marked increase in our resort tax, and sorry, it wants to confirm that I'm me. Make sure I get the right thing here, right? This shows a comparison of how our resort tax collections have come up. I did have this so it would, I was trying to work on so it would show the difference. Those last 3 bars obviously add the 1% in, but they actually are that high. They're above even without the 1%. So we can see what our resort tax collections have done. That's the red lines are resort tax collections. The white lines, or the blue lines are property tax collections. And what you will notice is that over about the last almost 15 years, that property tax collections have been flat or decreasing in revenue, despite inflation and rising home revenues, that those property tax revenues have decreased. Some of that has to do with the way that the resort tax was changed in 2017 to offset the way it offsetted property tax collection. So prior to 2017, I believe is the correct year, what they did is they moved money from resort tax collection to the general fund, and then after that, they did an actual refund into what they could levy for property taxes. So, and in 2021, because of the way the resort tax was budgeted, there was a significant return of money to the taxpayers in property tax relief. So the resort tax, while property tax relief was low on the rankings for what the money should be spent on, 15% of the resort tax goes to property tax relief, right?
No, it's only 5%.
5%. It's 5%. It used to be 5% goes to property tax relief, which still ends up being significant. So it was 15, then we moved it to 5 as a result of that survey. The other thing that changed, the 4 big changes was reduction in property tax relief, and elimination of resort tax money being spent on administrative expenses. So there was an administrative expense that went to the city for managing the property tax, and there was an administrative expense that stayed with the business owners. So kind of as an agreement, both of those went away to push more money to actual infrastructure projects. So the business owners gave up the money they were retaining with the resort tax, and the city did not get any more. It didn't get an administrative holdback either for resort tax. The other thing was the ability to use resort tax for operations and maintenance expense and this is limited, for parks and streets. So it can't be used for administrative expense and operations and maintenance of other city services, but what the push was that we were building infrastructure into parks, but had no way to maintain that infrastructure. So what we were having to do was theoretically build something nice, wait for it to completely be wrecked, and then replace it instead of maintaining it. The other push was, and you know, again, this happened right after we had a bad snow year, and so that, you know, again, moments in time affect folks, and people were eager to see improvements in snow plowing. And so some of our big expenses when we go back to this last one has been the purchase of plow trucks, as well as there is a 50-50 split position in the city that summertime goes to parks, works on parks and park projects, and in the winter does snow removal and snow removal projects. And that was a single full-time position in Public Works, and with the goal of supporting the things that were important in resort tax, that was parks and snow plowing and snow removal.
And that currently comes out of the resort tax?
And it currently comes out of the resort tax.
Just full salary plus benefits?
Full salary plus benefits for one person, yes, that's correct.
And that's the only staff person in the resort tax right now?
That is correct, yep. So that's just for you guys, the quick down and dirty resort tax issue. Do you guys want to add anything I forgot?
That covers it pretty good.
That one graph that for sure included the 1% for the stormwater in those numbers.
The big pie. That's
The big pie.
Okay, yeah, and then the amount collected in.
Yes, both of those included yes. So in some of our conversations, we have only been doing the 3%.
Yeah.
You know, and my feeling was, the reason I put that in there was that, you know, when someone's paying resort tax, the whole thing is the resort tax. Our resort tax is 4%. 1% is dedicated for a project, 3% is dedicated. We don't have any discretionary spending on that 3%, 1%,
Right.
excuse me. But it is part of the resort tax, and it is part of resort tax collections, and it's part of what the community is collecting through the resort tax. And that is specifically, very impactful, when you compare it to property taxes, like I showed there. It shows how much we're collecting more in resort tax to spend on our community than even we are on property tax.
Right.
And then this really shows where, when someone does pay a resort tax, when they stay at a hotel or they eat out, where that money is going, and it shows that we do currently put a lot of money, like we did originally, towards water sewer and storm sewer. So we're still, in a sense, burying a bunch underground, but we have some money that's going into parks, some streets operations and maintenance. So that streets operation and maintenance piece is that position, essentially. And then the street capital improvements, that's, things like the snowplow trucks and larger street.
Sweeper.
The new street sweeper, yes. Yep.
Which will get used more this year.
And the tax relief piece did include that big dip, right? The big
Yes.
chunk.
Yes.
Okay, so that'll slowly get narrower as,
Yes.
yep.
Yeah, so that tax relief piece will come down as time goes on, and we budget.
Do you have that same chart by chance readily accessible for just 2023, 24?
No. I mean, yeah, I could build it. I have the data, the data's right here. We haven't spent much in 2023, 24, but I would be able to build a chart. It would take just minutes to do.
Because a lot.
Did not update, this 2023 numbers with the new numbers that Jody sent out from Lonnie, because there wasn't significant expenditures, and I didn't want to spend the time to add it in again.
What's that, or line 12, where we're at like 50% or so of expected expenditures. It looks like in line 12 is already twice what it was in 2023.
What's column A say?
Law enforcement.
Law enforcement.
So the reason for that is, they bought 2 new cars this year. So, in last year's expenditures, it was, some stuff to outfit the vehicles. It was, some MDTs and, some body armor stuff, I believe. I do have that here, and I can look, because I don't want to misspeak, but, the big expense this year was that $103,000 was for, new vehicles.
We're really up to 1.3 and 1.5 in those 2 years.
Yes,
Are we tracking for that high this year again?
yes,
Wow,
yes,
it's gotten much better.
yes. Yes, it's gotten significantly better. Now, some of that's that extra 1%,
Oh, right.
but we're hitting 1.2 just in the 3%, which is significantly.
Right, yeah, 300,000. right,
Yeah,
would be-
yeah, and actually I can, go back to this other piece. I can redo this so that it shows the 3% and 1% separately, this middle.
The other reason why you want to is just to see historically how it's increased without, because
Yeah.
it started out at 3.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
The only other thing I would add for the folks that are new, and we're trying to fix it, so it should not be a problem going forward. But our fiscal year is July to June, and we have traditionally reported our collections in a January to December sort of a thing. And just be aware of what you're looking at, because they don't always necessarily align. Q1 may mean Q1, or may mean,
Yeah, I would do
fiscal
that.
Q1.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Last meeting where you
definitely
talked
a challenge that I've discovered. Still, we had this conversation last time.
Yeah.
There's, Q1 and 2 are talked about in different reports, different ways. It's even the 2 reports that are now currently posted on the website have Q1 and Q2
And you-
referring to different months.
Right, and you're probably gonna standardize it to the city's fiscal year eventually, if you or not.
That's what would make sense to me.
Yeah, because I
We've
mean, that's your
had that
budget.
conversation, but the reality is, we may just have a double column header, maybe, is our solution.
Oh, gotcha,
As opposed to even calling it quarters, just say what month it is.
right.
Yeah.
That might be less confusing.
Even better.
That's all I have on that, and unless somebody has some questions, I will stop sharing my screen here.
Was there any, I mean, I know we as the public we're okay with the reduction in the tax relief. Was there any like protest to that per se? Like, did anyone really come and say, I can't believe you're doing this? No.
Not that I
What
remember.
what was really interesting to me about it is that was in the same time frame as people were getting a big tax and the general feedback was specifically,
Take it back.
I was counting on that money going back, I'd rather see it go to
Right.
projects. So the timing of it actually worked out really well to validate. The feedback was, we'd rather you spend it on that.
Yeah.
Do we
I'm sure
have-
there's some people who would rather see
Right,
the
yeah.
tax relief. I mean, there's
I
gotta
don't
be.
remember hearing of
Do
any
we
like
have
one
a
person writing
solid
letters
number?
or
I know at
something.
one point, I've seen numbers of like what percentage of our resort tax is from out of town versus in town. I remember seeing like 70-30, but I don't know.
So,
In my mind, I'm trying to figure out
so-
where would that have come from?
so those numbers are anecdotal.
Okay,
And what we did is, we calculated a baseline, in, slow months,
Like April.
and then ran it, and then, all hotel revenue is clearly out of town, right? And so, we tried to do a baseline, so it's all anecdotal,
Well, it wasn't
it's-
completely, we didn't pull it out of our,
Well,
but it was an extrapolation.
yes.
I'm just wondering if that's something that Visa, MasterCard, and American Express could give us. I mean, I work in payments, so I just
Yeah.
feel like that's something that,
It is,
we could say like, okay, payments in this period, what came from people's addresses that have 59068 versus anything else?
absolutely could do that.
there's an
I have
awful
seen,
lot of
I have
people
seen
who-
that data.
Okay.
We could just say if it's credit card, it's out of town, if it's check, it's cash, it's in.
Oh, not
That
everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody uses a card these days. I hardly get any cash anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
I just use my phone.
yep, that's where I am now
Pretty much
too,
everything
yep,
that works.
getting there. All right, update on reporting form.
Did you, I sent out a copy of the new form, and we did this because we had an appeal for the penalty of $750. Someone did not, it was a short-term rental that was brought into compliance, and when, after they paid their back taxes, they were then late paying the new starting over taxes, and he ended up with a $750 penalty for being 60 days past due. So, it was appealed to city council and it was turned down, her appeal was. But we added a line on the actual reporting form now that says, if you are penalty fee, $250 if you're over 30 days past due, $750 if you're over 60 days past due. Because that was one thing that was brought up, is that it wasn't really on the form, that's
The
there.
person had not necessarily seen all the emails reportedly. They said, I just grabbed the form and I filled out all the blanks on the form, and if it had been on the form, I would have seen that. So we made
now
that,
on
the
we
form.
made that issue go away.
The other thing that this does is clearly states that people need to report by the month.
Do we collect resort tax for short-term rentals?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah. And when we got the software and we brought people into compliance,
Mhm.
we brought in like almost, was it $75,000 in back resort tax?
Is there, or will we make a, Excel version of this? Or make this a fillable, so, at one point, we did have an Excel version of this one that was on the, so we could have a PDF version and an Excel version,
Right.
so you can just download the Excel version, and then that way, everything calculates for you,
It would be easy to do.
yeah.
Do we have a revenue summary of the streams, like restaurants?
Yes, we do.
Retail?
That was
resort?
sent out with the email,
Okay. The email and two
I think, wasn't it?
No, I didn't send, it's out on the website though. For,
I have it,
yeah,
I put it, sure.
I didn't resend that out.
Yes, we do have that, and, that's the form that, and I didn't finish this. I had intended to invite you both to the Google Drive that has this in there.
Hmm.
And so I will finish that process, because I started to do it, and then I think I never actually, I never actually did it. But I can share my screen again quickly here, just so you can get a feel for it.
Was that a city Google Drive, or is that when you're donating space to?
It's mine. But we could definitely move that over to a city
Oh,
Google.
I'm not sure that we had one, was part of my question.
You don't. The last I heard, you don't, because,
We have lots of stuff, but most of it is not our repository, so.
because you don't really have a Gmail. You have to have a Google. I thought to have a Google Drive.
It turns out it's a hellacious process to get there.
Okay.
So, like, I can now access the Google Drive stuff from the mayor account, but it was way too much effort.
Just as a side note, we use Google as our whole
I knew
form at
that.
the fire department, and it's great. I really like it.
Dave, did you want to go back to Danae and see if she can get this as a spreadsheet?
I've
Okay.
taken it down as an
Okay.
action item, basically to see how much effort and does it already exist.
So, I might have grabbed an old version, sorry, I grabbed an old one. Thought I brought the new one over. I did not, but I can grab it off the website
Yeah.
pretty quickly here.
Do we collect any other fees for short-term rentals, or the only fees we collect go into resort tax?
Just, they also pay the T-bed fee, but that's not city, and they pay the state bed tax. They're treated just like a hotel.
And business
They are pretty
licensing.
much.
And the business licensing,
Yeah.
business license
Gotcha.
fees. The ones that weren't doing it were like individuals that were just, setting up the short-term rental. All the property managers have always been really good about
Yeah.
collecting all the fees and things like that. And they also now all have to have, fire inspections and health inspections done,
Right.
where before they didn't,
Hmm.
so.
Well, they did, they just maybe didn't always do it.
Right.
So
The city is
here.
now enforcing it.
Yeah, so here is, this is the quarters, and you can see where we have different quarter numbers here. Fiscal year 23-24, so this shows you, where I don't think this has been updated to
No,
show
yes, it hasn't been updated yet, of course.
quarter one, but, just gives you a feel for it. I'll pop down to last year to the total, I think, so you can see, this is, nope, that's the one.
Quarter one wouldn't be there anyway, because that would be payable
Thought we had
20.
I have a question, maybe for Jody as much as anything, that last one that says services and something or other that it went away. Services and equipment, and I apologize to the group, because this is, but on looking at that business licenses, there was that category one that talks about services and stuff that are not eligible for resort tax. Is there a very clear distinction about when it comes to services, what you're paying resort tax on?
I think services would be like guided trips, like if you hire a fly fishing guide or a whitewater rafting trip and you do it, you book it in town.
But
Then
somebody
you're
who
going to
puts a
have-
new roof on doesn't
No,
pay resort
yeah,
tax?
so,
Right, no, because it's a contract, that's not taxed, it's exempt.
Okay.
But guided trips, those kind of services are taxed.
so here's,
And, rentals are taxed, like if you go rent your skis, that's taxed.
all goods and services, with the exception of unprepared food items, that does not operate more than 90 days. This is where this is all detailed.
So we charge for golf.
Right.
Yep,
And golf
Okay.
lessons.
yep. So this is up on the city website, but this is the detail on the other thing, maybe I'll just go to this quickly, because this is kind of what our charge is: to review the resort tax administrative process, recommending improvements to elected officials, educating the public and stakeholders on the resort tax process, legal requirements, and current and past resort tax expenditures, soliciting public and stakeholder feedback on resort tax administration and resort tax expenditures, and making recommendations regarding expenditures to elected officials by systematically collected public feedback prior to the annual review of the city budget. So that's what we're tasked with. All right, back to, I had open. All right, so, any other questions on that resort tax form?
Getting pretty good, dialed in.
Yeah. Just gotta get people to use it.
Right.
And that's
Yeah,
all.
well, yeah, and not use old forms, which
Right.
doesn't have the quarter things, and so,
The monthly.
you know, the ordinance does say that they have to submit their resort tax on the form provided by the city,
Right.
and so,
That's
um,
fun now.
yeah, so we just need to I think if someone comes in with an old form or submits an old form, they need to tell them, hey, you're using the old form, you need to use the new form. And that will help you move that new form in the
I'll
process.
put down an action item too, that we need to make sure an email blast to let people know that it is a new form.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know, do you have an email list of all the people who submit resort tax?
I believe so.
So that would be a good way to communicate with them.
That's part of the business register, that's what the whole business
Yeah.
license.
We didn't have a lot of
registration
them, just so you know, because it wasn't a question on the business license application, the business registration, application.
is. And is it now?
I don't know. I think we asked that it be added, but I don't know if that happened or not. Because when we were doing the event, that event survey that Terry Durbin worked on, we went around and got a whole bunch of emails.
Is email address on that?
Nope, just business contact and phone number.
And might make a suggestion that you add email to that.
Okay.
It is, I know shockingly, it's actually become a way of communicating these
Oh,
days.
yeah, Through the form.
Post to send.
Dave, will you ask Danae to add the email address to the form? A lot of times it's more important than.
That's what I would say. I mean, in terms of communicating with somebody, if there's an error or there's a question, you know, obviously if you're gonna call them or you're gonna send them an email, you're not gonna mail them a letter.
Although Danae did, the gal who sent her 2 letters,
Yeah.
so 3 letters.
Well, if you're gonna, I mean, there's
Yeah.
processes where you have to send letters,
Right,
but there's
exactly.
also processes where you can.
It's a lot quicker to
Yes.
do an email, for
Yes.
sure.
All right, state resort tax meeting, next meeting update?
We got the Tuesday, May 21st, 3 to 4:30 PM, I got the notice.
I got that as well.
Okay. And will you be able to?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's a little far out to
I know, that's
guarantee
what I
on
was
that.
like, wow.
But I don't have anything else scheduled, and I believe I can make it, yes.
If you wanna explain what it is, please.
So, maybe I'll let Jeremy do this. He knows more than I do about it, I think, at this point.
Sure, yeah, so it's a newly formed association, yeah, of all the resort tax communities and areas. And they're tasked with, well, their mission is a few things: to lobby on our behalf, the state legislature. What that looks like, I don't know, it's just being launched. We had our first meeting, last month sometime.
Mhm.
Yeah, each community ideally will send a representative, or in our case, a representative who can be, you know, shuffled as needed. Yeah, they've got a couple of committees that they're looking for. I should bring my notes up for this. They have a few committees, one of which is, so like engaging the legislature, that's a big one. another one is like gathering kind of best practices, a few other things. But basically, we're members of that association currently.
State have any staff office supporting the committee, or is it all just volunteer?
It's kind of spearheaded by the Big Sky folks,
Uh,
and they've got, staff who are paid through their resort tax. You know, their budget is something like 5 times, I believe, more than ours,
Gotcha.
maybe more than that.
So Big Sky have like a staff person that just focuses on resort tax, or?
Yeah, and since they don't have like a local government,
Right,
you know, they're the de facto people you go to.
Right. Yeah.
When you need something municipal paid for, so.
right.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do like some type of grant applications for the funding, don't they, for people that actually,
Yeah, they have a really impressive, little ranking system of, you know, they fund various nonprofits, they do, you know, a whole bunch of different things year to year. But,
And so is the executive or legislative branch of our state government, like, supportive of this, or this is just all community-led, resort tax community-led?
it seems like it was led by the communities themselves. I don't know of any state level hand in it at all.
Yeah, I think it's all driven by the resort tax
Yeah.
communities.
And I think part of that was probably a preemptive protection, as we've seen some things come down from the last couple of years that are hitting municipalities and
Right.
counties really hard. I think it was an effort to get ahead of it.
Yeah, makes sense.
There's definitely, you know, I mean, there's definitely concern, I think, in some of the resort tax communities that some other larger municipalities might be pushing for a sales tax,
Mhm.
and how that would affect the resort tax
Right.
ones. And then I think the question of a statewide sales tax, if that would affect the resort tax communities.
Was it you I heard it through, or was it another, but I have heard that come down as,
I think,
at the very, very top, that
the-
that
the
is
gov-
that is a non-starter.
the governor commissioned a property tax renewal, or property tax review board, and it
Task
was,
force, I think you called it.
what's that?
Task force, I think
Task
you
force,
called it,
okay,
but-
thank you. And when he commissioned them, he said, you know,
This is
this
not one of your
is,
options.
yeah, sales tax is off the table, do not bring me a sale, it's a non-starter, sales tax is a non-starter. I think I used to know exactly what he said, but I don't remember for sure, but essentially he said, do not bring me anything that involves a sales tax. So, I think that was, he made that loud and clear that
Yeah,
he
it was
would not be supporting this,
unambiguous.
yes.
I do have the updated slides, if you cared to scroll through them. I could just forward them to you guys too.
Yeah, why don't you just forward them to him so that they can see it? All right. We've got Dave and Lonnie update on budget timeline.
You will know. So I have a staff meeting, I wanna say it's next week, that we're going through, and getting the initial snapshot. But I will also be working with, actually, I've, elicited Tom's help, and he has offered to help, come play a role in the city side aside from just the resort tax part. He's got a good understanding of government budgeting. But that first initial one will come in. What I'm trying to do is break it down, to capital, salary, and operation and maintenance. One of the things that I'm discovering as we get into it, and as I'm fielding questions, is what we call a budget is not really a budget. It's, here's the initial allocation of resources. And a lot of times when you say budget, people want to be able to track that on a month-by-month basis. You know, we're up, we're down, where are we? And I'm still mulling that over in my head. I still want to we'll still do our initial budget and call it, you know, which is really an allocation of. But that, maybe this is as good a time as any. I had asked last time about the possibility if there was an eligibility for resort tax dollars to deal with acquisition of properties. I have since taken that off the table, so just by way of information, as I have talked to people and pulled the conversation about why are we using any city money that is going to end up in the pocket of victim X, but not victims Y, Z, and A, B, C, D, E, F is not a conversation that I know how to have. So, the folks that are interested in that conversation, so specifically Bastion's on their property, and it's worth noting, I have made that decision and initiated contact with Sean, who is going to be meeting, and Eagles Nest may end up in a very similar situation. But what we'll be doing is, it'll be FEMA dollars only, no local tax dollars that go into acquisitions of those properties.
Is that possible?
Pardon?
Is that possible?
Mm-hmm. Basically, what they do is they write off the 25%, which quite frankly, there was a whole bunch of additional things we did for matches, like if we did efforts, if we donated stuff to, and the reality is, all of that work, none of it yielded anything additional in their pocket. The only thing that would yield additional money in their pocket is if we can get a companion state grant to come in, or another grant, or local tax dollars. And what we're doing is we're making an effort to get them the very best offer they can from the FEMA. We are looking at all the state things, and we're basically compiling them so they know we've made a good faith effort to get additional funding. But the only one that has been a real conversation with to date was Bastion's, and it was actually, they were said, absolutely, that's not a conversation we want you to have, so. And then, if they write it off, then presumably there'll be a tax benefit. They'll actually get more out of the write-off than if we hide it, so.
I would say, I think, it's just a personal opinion, that it would benefit the community to have both those properties.
And both, and we're working on both of those, and we may still come back and ask about resort tax if we need it for matching, but that'll be post-acquisition.
Okay.
It won't be that either resort tax dollars or property tax dollars are ending up in the pocket of some victims and not others. There wasn't a good way to have that conversation.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I understand that. The only other way, I guess, that one could understand that is if you had a public purpose for the use of the property, like, for example, I mean, anything that might have a public purpose.
That's where we started, because
Yeah,
both of those by
absolutely.
definition will be public purpose. But as I had that conversation with different people, and as I found myself, it was like,
Right.
you're right. And so it was easier to draw a line and say, this is a boundary and where it's gonna be. So the public purpose will be post-acquisition, not part of the acquisition.
Which could be in terms of cleaning the property up and,
Yeah, we're getting grants for those sort of things, but if they require a match, so like we get 80%, but we have to come up with 20%, then that would be a valid use for
if you
it.
had to plant trees or put park benches or do.
We can't do park benches, that's another part of the
You can't do
conversation.
park benches?
Yeah,
Those aren't permanent structures.
Very specific.
Let me,
I'm like,
my
I was being hypothetical,
Yeah, no, no.
or in some level of things to make it look priced and give it a better public
The
benefit.
most
Let's
solid
put it
thing that I
way.
have heard that has been approved is they did garden spots. So like they have like a community garden where Tom has his row and Brent
But no
has
place
his
to sit
row.
down and look at the garden?
How is the garden life stream?
I know, who told you that? Because we have,
We don't need to,
so we have Rotary Park and they have park benches. I mean, they have picnic tables in it. They have,
Even
Yeah, but
and that's
the
totally in the floodway.
But the federal government didn't dish out a couple $1 million and they said, if you take our money, you have to accept the rules that we're giving with it.
Wow.
That's the way federal
A
money
lot of
works.
those aren't permanent structures, though. You can haul them away.
Yeah,
I
and
think
we don't need to debate this
We'll get
now.
to that, yeah.
All right, update on resort tax collections and spending. Do you have anything additional on that?
Nothing
From
other than what
Lonnie's office.
the email that Lonnie sent out today.
Yeah, so I did get, a couple of things from Lonnie. I did get a list. I did not ask her for what we've spent so far this year. I think it's better just to get that on a year basis. I got the detail for last year, and I put that in the drive. I probably will ask her for the previous 3 years, so we'll have all that documented, and I'll just put that in each year, in the drive as a file for each year, and so then we'll have the detailed expenditures in each year.
Well, it is on the report that I sent out to everybody, the year-to-date expenditures
Yeah.
of the resort tax. But what everyone has to realize is that most of the resort tax funding isn't done until May and June, when we actually know how much we've collected.
The nature is we don't spend it till we got it.
Right.
Although, I would say that we already know what we're gonna collect. At this point, you're not going to, I mean, I guess you're gonna get,
April, May, June.
well, you won't get that this year. That won't be in this
Okay.
budget year.
So the end of March.
So
Yeah.
it's in April, technically, is when you get the last
April 20th,
collection.
yeah.
It's April 20th collection, so that's essentially correct. That's May and June, you're right. But you still have a pretty good idea what you're collecting and what you're gonna collect. There's not a lot of variability in that, in terms of building the expenditures. What I did try to do, and I think in my mind that is helpful, is understanding that cash balance in that resort tax and what our expected expenditures are and what our income is, so we understand what we're moving over. And, you know, if we're holding a large cash balance, why, you know, what are we holding that cash balance for? Is, you know, probably important to understand too. So, you know, what is our expectation at the end of the budget year of what we would have left in cash? And that somewhat comes down to my belief that paying down the debt that we have with the pool is a priority in trying to get us the ability to move on to the next project. Yes, sir.
I have a question, because I heard you, and it's based in the May, June, and July don't count until August. But rewind the meeting about 10 or 15 minutes, and you made a call out that noticing that the form says resort taxes due monthly, or was it just reported?
No, so it's reported monthly, it's not.
Okay, not
so-
collected.
Yeah, and the reason we did that, and we asked for that, was so we would have better data on when our visitors are here and when we're collecting resort tax, because it becomes very hard to understand, if you do July, August, September, right? And especially October, November, December, where you're seeing highs and lows if you just got 4 points on the graph. So if we can get 12 points on the graph, then we can see where we might need to try to make efforts to increase resort tax, or things that might, in the resort tax world, benefit us more because they might benefit bringing more people to town that would then increase resort tax.
That's maybe one of those, going back to the introductory thing, so that you guys know, not everybody does it exactly the same way. Some of them do it seasonally, so it's only during the summer months, like over in Cook City.
They only collect resort tax in the summer?
Yeah, it's only, they only do it.
Snowmobiles don't have to pay resort tax.
I think it's just summer. So your ice cream cone in July costs extra, here in November it doesn't.
Really? I didn't know that was legal.
I don't even know you could do that, yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say.
How they wrote their ordinance, I guess.
Or how they
I guess it's
that.
collected on luxuries, and maybe it's a necessity if you buy it in October.
Did we?
We only have luxuries in the summer.
I'll sit next.
It is amazing how much
Yeah.
quieter is there in the winter.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's a very different town than we are.
We are, I will tell you, our business is, although looking forward to April and May, April at least of this year, it looks very quiet. But we have seen definitely an increase in off-season business. It has increased significantly. This year's been a little hard, you know, last year was really good, so it's sometimes hard to compare this year to last year.
Yeah.
We're definitely down this year.
The lack of snow.
This March has been we actually were not great in January, and then we saw February pick up, and now March is not holding its own at all. But, so coming back to the piece on expenditures, part of the challenge is that we, have budgeted for more than we expect to take in, and that creates a little bit of challenge in understanding, exactly what our expenditures are, and where, you know, where we're going. So for example.
And to add some, right off of that, so if you go back to the chart that you showed earlier, where there was 1 year where property tax was way, way down and resort taxes were up, what happened is we ended up, and I think it was like the first COVID year, collecting way more than what we anticipated. The way the laws are written, which we learned the painful way, is if you didn't budget it, it went to property taxes, you couldn't do it. So what has become the practice now from a city standpoint is we knowingly, we pick some number that's moonshot high above what we anticipate.
It could happen.
But, well, it did, it
Yeah.
has, but the point is, you don't spend it for that. So you don't spend on things that are required basic structure, you don't count on getting those resort taxes. But what we've done is traditionally, like, we can put in a very big number, pay 400,000, 500,000 off on the pool. If we don't hit our numbers, it's not gonna get paid off, but if we have a surplus, it can be used to knock that stuff down so that in the future, you know, when you get a windfall, use it to knock out the stuff that's keeping us from pursuing other things. Right, Tom, go.
Nope, that's a good kind of just information. Jeremy, was that required in the law? Is that why we put that in there?
Yeah.
I think it is.
Can I ask?
Now, interestingly
Yeah.
enough, a couple of cities
Depending on your
have
interpretation.
so they have a legal opinion, and I'm trying to think if it was
We struggle with the legal opinions.
Cook City or something, yeah, there,
Big Sky.
was it West Yellowstone?
This is West
There was
Yellowstone.
one of the cities that has no property tax. They got a legal opinion that said property taxes are in fact less
You mean-
because you're using it here, your resort tax. So they do no
Property tax.
no
relief,
property
yeah.
tax rebates. Their ruling was, you're using it on streets and waters, and if it weren't for this, you would have to raise taxes, and therefore it's tax rebate. And I was like, what? But they've been that way, but they wrote it that way from the beginning.
So wait, you're saying they use 100% of their resort tax for property tax relief?
They
No,
show it,
I'm saying
Or-
they
No.
use 0%.
right, well, they show
Oh,
it.
they don't
going-
even do the 5, is what
No,
you're saying.
they
yeah.
show it going into their general fund,
I see. what
and
you're
they're saying, we don't have to, you know, we're using it in our general, part of it in our general fund.
Right,
So-
so it's like effectively tax relief. because you
That's,
have
the
to pay
legal
it.
opinion is it's an effective tax relief as opposed to a literal tax relief like we do. But that was, I got really excited, and then that's just how they wrote it originally 30 years ago.
No. Joy, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and this might, I can wait till after we're done and ask it, because it might be stupid, but I'm just wondering, so if we're collecting this money, and then we get it at a certain time, and we spend it at a certain time, what are we doing with it while it's sitting there? Is
It
'cause-
gets interest.
Okay, because I was gonna
Not
ask that,
great,
because
but it
like,
gets interest.
thinking about the pool loan, what interest rate is that at versus what interest rate are we earning when it's sitting there?
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask that question because I don't know the answer to.
Okay.
Where did I just have this?
It's not a lot, the interest,
It was $7,000 last year.
It should
it's
be
more
more
this year,
because the
Yeah.
rates are
Yeah.
so much higher, but our
We
rate on the
are-
loan is fixed, right?
we are over 10,000, we had budgeted 10,000 in interest, and we are over by 3,300 so far, almost 3,400 in interest collected, so.
So we do get some, but, you know, in the grand scheme of things, holding a large bit of cash in there. So, you know, we've been turning over the year, and I need to find out, I knew that I had another question for Lonnie that I forgot to ask her, which was, what was the fund balance at the end of '23? But we were at 500,000 at the end of '21 fiscal year, 775,000 at the end of '22.
That's because we had saved the money for.
Yeah, no, I
the-
understand, so I need to find out where we were at the end of the '23.
Yeah, because we had budgeted for the plow truck and the street sweeper, and neither one of those came in, so they carried that over to
Yeah,
the
which is
next
the right thing.
budget.
Yeah.
So, and when we actually were able to spend that money.
And I would like to have, and particularly when it comes to the collections, I would love to see year over year. Those 12 points are only good if I can compare them to the year over year, over year.
Yeah, so that's the problem. So we do have the ability, I mean, that's, you know, that chart that I showed you that shows what our collections look like year over year, right? The challenge is we don't have the 12 points, we only have 4 points for year over year. We can run those, but that's why we want to get into 12 points.
How long have we been doing the 12 points?
Well, the problem is people haven't been reporting them.
Okay.
So the thing is if you get, you know, if 25% of your folks only give you
If it
a
does
quarter.
this every quarter, then you know.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens, and so you could divide those equally among the quarters and then let the people who are, but, so we need to get it so that people are reporting by the month. There was some debate, you know, Dennison said that he thought that the ordinance, that we couldn't require them to report by the month because it's not in the ordinance. However, my belief is the ordinance says that they're required to report on the form that they give, that the city gives them, and if the city gives them a form that says by the month, they're required to report by the month. But that, you know, it might take us going back and changing the ordinance saying they have to report monthly.
Or we may just have to deal with 4 data points for a while too.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, that would be a pretty minor ordinance change, you know.
But.
We are due for a review.
Oh, if it's the administrative ordinance.
It's the administrative ordinance.
Then we can change it, that doesn't have to
That's
go to the
correct.
voters.
Yes, it's administrative ordinance, not.
Okay.
So we are at like 1.1 million collected for this fiscal year, so that's good. We budgeted 1.8. We probably, obviously won't get another $700,000 from this quarter.
We'll probably get 300.
Yeah, so that's good. That's really good.
It's gonna be a big year. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
overall, even with January, this quarter being down, this current quarter being down, summer was
Should hit
very good. I mean,
1.4, yeah.
at least my numbers were very good, so I'd be
Yeah.
shocked if, I feel like there are more businesses in town, so I think the numbers would be very good.
So we have a few empty buildings right at the moment.
Yeah. All right, any questions so far? Try to keep ourselves moving here. Apologize that I manage a couple different things on my iPad. Stormwater project update.
It is going to be coming, it'll be, discussion, at this next meeting with hopefully a resolution of intent at the following meeting. We have our bids for the remaining stormwater. As it sits right now, if we can get council to buy off on it, we're gonna present it to council. It looks like it'll add $10 a month, and stormwater will be done this year, unless seasonally pushes it into next year. So,
Can you explain the $10 a month, what are you saying?
So when we set up stormwater, and when we set this up, there were two things. There's the 1%, which is the thing. We also set up an ordinance that established a stormwater maintenance fee. And in that ordinance, it says it's like $3.39.
On your water bill.
And except it's not on your water bill. It's on your taxes. It's not on your water bill.
Oh,
I said water bill, and boy, did I get corrected today.
I'm
So-
sorry.
so,
Yeah, I guess I thought it was on there.
Yeah, now I know who it was who gave me that bad
That's the
information, I
curb stop
believe.
fee that's on the water bill.
That's all right, I
Yeah.
owned it. So anyway, in there, it also says that if there's capital, then there will be an additional fee assessed, and that's per property. And basically what will happen is we'll finance the remaining, stormwater via an SRF loan. And then basically we have to pay that back, and so that would be set up to pay that back. So, and then the stormwater 1% can be used for a couple of different purposes. Because we're collecting it on taxes, it has, like, if they wanna come in and start on it, we can use that to start on the stormwater project there. And if there ends up being, the other thing we can do is there's a lot of stuff that's stormwater related that isn't the actual stormwater system. So coming in and putting the roads back in on top of it and doing the repair.
Where is the storm, I mean, when I looked at the design for the stormwater, I was surprised that it didn't look like it was hitting downtown. It seemed like they were headed, they went over, they obviously went across Broadway and then,
Not a downtown project,
no,
Main Street project?
No. So where is it pulling stormwater from?
everywhere. So the stuff they did right now is just the northeast corner of town.
Yeah.
And then they've got multiple stages, like 2, 3, and 4. There's like,
There's like five or
it's
five.
stage 2 and 3, but there's multiple phases within it. And what happened is they put them out for bid, and the bid came back better than expected and underneath the engineer's
I
prediction.
didn't know that was possible.
We didn't either, but the low bidder, is also the one who did stage 1.
Oh, good.
And so the reports have all been positive, and it's been, so there's a comfort level of, we got the low bid from somebody we've seen their work and we're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And, but that's ultimately council's decision, because it is a rate increase on the, it's basically to pay off an SRF.
So is it gonna go from, it'll
It's
go from 3 whatever, is it
gonna
3
go
per
from
month?
3.5 to 13.5
Per month?
per month,
Per
But that's
property? How,
per
But
property.
that's just.
In the whole city?
That's on our tax bill. I'll have to look at my.
So how much, what's the annual rate right now? The annual fee
Don't
right
make
now?
me do public math.
It's $3.50 a month, is that what you're saying?
It's $3.39 right now, is my memory.
$3.39, okay. And
So
it's-
times that by 12, and then add $120 to that. That I can do.
And,
But there's also some things that
and the
we end
council
up,
has the ability to enact that fee without any.
there's a public hearing, but fees are not an ordinance.
Right.
It's a public hearing and a resolution.
$160.68.
And then what, there's.
And how long will that stay on there?
Pardon?
How long will that stay on there?
That's a 20-year loan unless we pay it off early, which is an option. And again, going back to using those money to pay things off as quickly as it makes sense to do so.
well, and what are you using predictions on the 1% for 20 years too?
At this point, that is 0 of that 1% factored into that.
Oh, so then that's gonna be huge, because that's $300,000 $400,000 a year.
And then you pay it off early.
Yes, good.
But then effectively spending it on tax relief, right?
Pardon? No, because we'll have the pool paid off first too. Like I said, we're not, well, the objective is, like I said, the biggest raise you can give yourself is paying off your car early.
For sure.
Just like kids out of college today don't understand that.
Oh, so, but you're saying though that when we talk the stormwater, the 1%, you would be using to go back and repave those roads? and-
It could be used for
Sidewalks.
the finish work along that are related and tied to the stormwater.
Mhm.
Okay.
Which would be really that would be great.
Talk to your council members. Oh, wait, you don't have one, right? No. That was not even where I started. It was just kind of funny when I said it out loud.
All right, public outreach.
Did I understand your question and did I answer it satisfactorily?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love to learn more about the stormwater project.
Come to Tuesday, because there's gonna be a significant chat on that Tuesday night.
I'm not here, I'm not telling.
You can watch the recording and get all the same information.
Okay.
It'll be up Wednesday morning.
All right, public outreach survey questions and spending categories to highlight in the survey.
So, we had talked about doing a new survey, because it was 2019 was the last one
Yep.
that we did, the end of 2019, before COVID. There are, we've been getting a lot of, pushback, not really pushback, but questions like, why aren't we spending resort tax on workforce housing? Why aren't we spending, we're looking at doing a public safety district. Can we go back and ask, if maybe public safety is higher up on their list of priorities for spending resort tax? So I guess if we do this new survey, what questions do we ask? Do we just redo the last survey we did? Only we'll take out stormwater and pool because we have both of those projects now.
I'd like to,
But they're still paying it off.
I'd like to hew close to our categories we had last time, just so we can
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hold some
absolutely,
variables
yeah,
the same,
yeah. But I would like to, see that survey.
I'd be happy to do a draft survey. I don't have we use Constant Contact for that survey, which maybe reports a little bit differently than what I use right now, which is, called, Typeform. No, I don't use Survey. But I'd be willing to build one in Typeform,
Okay,
and see if I can't, get close to what that last survey was, and then we could use that as a draft.
Yeah,
And
do we have a copy of the last survey
Yep.
anywhere? Okay, yeah, because that's, I mean, just to give you guys a little bit of my background too, I do customer research for a living, so, doing surveys is something that I can certainly add some value on. And, but yeah, like to your point though, it is important to look, especially if you want to do any comparisons and see if they, and even how things are worded can change how people respond. And so,
absolutely.
and looking at the last one, I mean, if it wasn't worded well to begin with, doesn't mean we should word it,
Right,
we don't want to word it wrong again, but.
We spent a bunch of time on it, doesn't mean
Yeah.
it was perfect, because it definitely was not, but it was pretty good. I thought it worked pretty well, yeah.
But one of the things for the new folks to understand as well, so what resort tax can go, we can do a survey and we get new information, but if there was going to be a change, it can only be changed by the voters.
Right, if it changes how, like, right now, we cannot spend money to pay salaries for public safety. We can buy capital, we can buy a new police car, but we can't pay the officers, so.
Well, and we can't build workforce housing.
Yeah, we
with it.
can't build workforce housing out of it.
If the survey says, hey, that's number one, then we can have a
Well,
conversation
and,
about it.
I also did get, Tracy Timmons did reach out to me about CART, and she would love it if the city would help pay for CART, but it's not a city service, so to speak. So she wanted to know if there was any way that resort tax could help pay for CART. And I don't know that
We buy a
possible.
vehicle and then give it to a
profit. I'm
Government
like, yeah, I don't
entity?
know that we can do that, based
Some
on the
municipalities
ordinance.
do, but-
Generally, actually, those transit programs are, usually you can get funding to purchase the vehicles, it's the operations that's the challenge with those all
Right.
the time, and so.
And that-
Because they get a Department of Transportation grant, I know.
They do,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if we can include that in the survey, as an additional question, about nonprofits and specifically CART or grant programs again, because, when we were talking about grant programs before, it was like if a nonprofit comes to the city and asks for funding through the resort tax, would you want that ability?
Which is
It
what
would have
CART
to
would
then,
be.
yeah, it would have to be voted on, again, by the public.
What they're doing right now, so some additional information, I was gonna ask, because when I had reached out, so basically, both me and Commissioner Bullock, separately and independently, went and pushed back and said, do you remember when you started this process, that we said you're welcome to do it, but you're doing it without municipal funding, because we just don't have it, and you decided to go ahead and start it anyway, and now you're coming back, and part of it is they put a letter that was going out that stated, in their letter, there's 42 of these throughout the state, and we are the only one that doesn't have state and it was like, what's the purpose of that? That's incendiary language, and so what they're doing right now is they're going back to a donation thing, which I think will go very well. I said, I'm a huge fan of CART. That doesn't mean we can print money to do it. And then they are looking at, if they go for a tax like an extra mill, it'd be on a county-wide basis rather than the city, so it would be a county issue, not a city. But, I was gonna ask if there had been any follow-up from this group. I know in my conversations with you, and to a lesser extent with Tom, it kind of came back, and I can understand why it is we can't do resort, because that was their question, is why can't you just use resort tax dollars for that? And to me, it felt, that was a really easy one to answer, because we have very distinct language passed by the voters that does that.
Well, it has to be a city program. It can't just be, because we specifically didn't include the grant.
But
aspect of it.
I'm sure that I'll catch some more flaming arrows tomorrow, so.
Yeah,
So just quickly, what I would say is, we could use money, resort tax money could be used for CART, but it would require us to go back to the voters to be eligible to do that.
exactly. And I would want
Short
that,
version of that.
I would want that question in the survey to see if there's even any
Jeremy,
will of the people to do that.
I just did a quick look through my stuff, and I don't know if I have the original actual survey questions.
Yep.
So if you maybe could just do, Jody, you two, a quick look and see if you have that somewhere.
Maybe.
It's not in that resort tax renewal committee folder but I might be missing it. So maybe we'll just look around, and I might have it in a downloaded,
Tim might have it.
and Tim might have it as
I
well.
bet Tim might
Yeah,
have it.
so.
Well, I appreciate surveys, generally speaking. I guess the one thing that sometimes they lack is like, you know, we have a magnitude of need in areas, like our streets, for example. And, you know, when the public doesn't have an understanding or isn't educated on the magnitude of need, they're not necessarily gonna respond, you know, it's a perception versus reality situation, so I just.
So what we did last time, and I thought, you know, it was a lot of work, but it was effective, is that we did the survey,
Right.
and then we did a public meeting that was well-attended.
Yeah, I came.
And we educated at the public meeting,
Mhm.
and then re-asked questions to truth the survey.
Okay.
And it seemed like the survey that, you know, so for example, you would think just doing a survey, you wouldn't have put stormwater as a high priority,
Right,
right?
Sure.
So obviously that took some education.
but you were trying to sell that one.
And that
Yeah,
was,
so we were, but that took a thing to say, hey, we're gonna raise this resort tax by a whole %. This is why we need to do it. So there has to be an education component
Mhm.
about what's needed and why. Otherwise, you're right, it's just kind of,
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about, you know, what are the main priorities for the resort tax. I mean, we have a lot of expenses out there that we can't change. I mean, that's just spoken for right off the top, you know, so it's just that discretionary funding, if we happen to have it, you know, what would be the public's wish for that? How would they like that to be spent? You know, do they want additional things, you know, put at Lions Park, like a cover for the, you know, I guess, yeah, for the ice rink, so it lasts longer, so the sun doesn't just melt it. And then you can use it for farmer's market in the summertime. So, you know, you
Yeah.
kind of put some of those
Right.
projects out there, like we did pool last time.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that
I-
was absolutely up there, you
Right.
know, but if you pick a couple bigger projects for, parks, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen, but we can find out if, you know, do they want new tennis courts, or pickleball courts? Do they want,
Right.
restrooms at one of, you
Yeah.
know, bathrooms at one of the parks, permanent bathrooms at one of the parks, or on Broadway?
Well, and I
you
guess
know?
at some point in time, I assume our role as tax, resort tax, and it was described in, when Tom went over our roles and responsibilities, would be ourselves to have an opinion on where we believe the resort tax money should be spent. And that one would inform, if we were working on a survey, I would think, to some degree. And so, I don't know, that's probably, you know, we're already past your hour time
Yes,
commitment
yeah,
for
yeah.
meetings, but I would suggest that at a future meeting with new members, we have a, you know, on the agenda, a discussion of what our perspectives might be on what we have been spending versus what our opinions are, so that we can then obviously make a
Will you put
recommendation.
that-
The council,
will you get that next
who
time?
makes that,
Yeah.
who makes the ultimate decision,
yeah.
because we're getting
So
up on
next
budget
agenda.
and time, yeah. I
So,
mean, and related to the survey, because I know surveys are so complicated and take time for everyone, do you have like a goal for when you'd want to have that survey occur?
I would like to have it, by, if we could, by the time we vote on the budget.
Really?
I was
That might be
July.
a little tight.
July,
I was gonna
August.
say, I think realistically, your survey is actually
For next-
gonna play into next year's
Okay.
budgeting process, because you can't come in after the process is all
No,
done.
no, I'm not saying necessarily that. I mean, I just think it would be really fresh in our minds on how we're spending it versus,
So I would say your
people have
deadline,
people
going
like-
back to the question, is probably March, April of next year.
Right.
Is when you ought to have that information, so it could be factored into.
Yeah, I mean, I would even try to, I'd set it for like February, so that you have that information prior to your start of your next.
Basically,
annual
we
budget.
start into the budgeting process really
With
big
that
at the first of May.
Yeah, yeah,
And there's already some stuff going on right now.
for
but-
sure, yeah.
Back to the moment, sorry, probably, I don't want to derail things more, but back to the moment in time thing that we talked about when we were looking at the other things, like, the timing of the survey should also be thinking about, okay, did people just get their property tax statements and then we're sending the survey? Or, you know, did something just, was there a major event? You know, and then we're sending the survey, because all of those
Tom has a
things,
thought on that.
yeah, will impact the responses, and, you know, and again, maybe if we have a standard survey and we have an easy way to distribute it, maybe we get on a cycle where it's every 6 months or something more
Yeah,
frequent, so that that moment in time thing doesn't become an issue.
Yeah, the big thing these days are called pulse surveys. Like,
Yeah.
You just get a pulse out. You
Yeah.
you might only
Yeah.
answer 3 questions.
Yeah.
That's all,
The
yeah,
next round,
that's what
you
we
do 3
do.
more questions. Yeah, we're all doing pulse surveys too. So, I mean, yeah, in general, the public, of course,
That,
has
yeah,
survey fatigue as
I-
well.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say, I think we have to
Right,
be careful, I use
moment,
6
yeah.
months sounds overwhelming to
Right.
me, you know, I think every couple of years is you know, cause part of it is, for us, is doing that survey piece, but it's also us getting out and talking to people and, you know, connecting with the community and going to groups and saying, all right, what do you think? You know, cause that, you know, while some of it's captured in survey results, I think a lot of what we pushed in that priority list that we did, some of it's captured in the survey, but some of it was also, a lot of it was captured in the people, like.
That was right next to
yeah,
it.
so-
What's the comms plan around something like this, so that
Yeah.
way we can get that information?
Yeah, so, you know, well, a lot of it was us out talking to the community.
Right.
And that public meeting, and, you know, there was just a lot of buzz, because obviously we had to get it voted on, right? So,
Yeah.
so there
Yeah.
was a lot of talk for it, and people were pretty, you know, we knew what we were hearing, and when we sat around the table and talked about what are we hearing, we all were hearing the same thing. And so, does that mean it's 100% accurate? Not always, but at least it gave us some insight into, you know, that priority. Like, you know, people were adamant they wanted a pool, like, that was a big thing. You know, did that have to do with the pool shutting down? No, maybe a little bit, right? But,
Yeah.
you know, that it still was, you know, having a pool in our community was really important to folks, and they, you know, but that, the piece of that they didn't want to see all of the resort tax money get buried in the ground continually was pretty, you know, it's pretty adamant, that people were saying, you know, yeah, water and sewer is important, but this is a resort tax, we can't keep building water and sewer infrastructure with resort tax, we need to have stuff that benefits, you know, we need to see some stuff downtown, right? Like, we need to see benefits from the resort tax for the people that are actually paying the resort tax, and we haven't even gotten there yet in terms of downtown sidewalks and downtown streetscapes and some of that kind of stuff. But we really heard that, you know, pretty loud, that was important.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the survey done this year, rather than beginning of next year, you know, just because it has been, you know, almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years this fall.
I think we can start working on it and
Yeah.
get it, you know, and then get it pushed out, you know, when we think
Yeah.
we're ready for it to go. I mean, I don't think it's gonna take months to get it out, and then
No.
and then you can throw it out there and see what people think.
I think fall's a good time. for
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
So just to reiterate, on the next agenda, you want, priorities for like our priorities?
Yeah, I think,
Resort tax
yeah.
Just some
board.
thoughts on
Okay,
new
resort
members
tax.
and.
Because maybe what we should spend the next time really talking about is, maybe almost exclusively, so that we really get into it, is what are we spending the money on? And what should we be spending the money on?
Because
that's gonna lead
now
into
we're
the budget.
building- We're leading
Yeah.
into the budget.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think what's helpful if you show up with is, you know, from a city perspective, as the mayor, what do you want to see, go to? And
Yeah,
what I will I will base this, because this is what happened last time, I would hope to not say $400 for something that we don't know exactly what it is.
400,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or even 400.
Very much.
So, you know,
Unlabeled
so that we
$400.
really know where we're going with this, and we can say, hey, you know, this is our priorities. You know, and one of the things we asked is like, you know, should we expect that we need to buy 2 more police cars next year? Or do they not need to buy 2 police cars for another 4 years?
Every 2 years.
I think they're looking at, is it 2 every 2 years that they're doing?
That's what Chief Schrock said last year.
So then is there gonna be another, you know, is there another capital piece that they really need coming up with this that goes along with that, you know?
Well, we have that list of priorities that people wanted, but it was such a huge wish list and not all of it applied. I mean, it was kind of,
It was
Yeah.
needed to be curated.
yeah, like a long.
We had asked for a list and we got things that weren't, 50% of the stuff that was on the list wasn't even allowable expenditures.
And that's, and then, part of the feedback I got is, there was an initial conversation up front, and then that was the last that was heard until the budget was passed, and it was like, did they lose our notes in between the time they asked us and the time they made the budget? So we won't have that issue this year.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
No, did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes? I'm sorry, I didn't have it on the agenda, if you guys are good with them, so.
I can't comment on minutes, right, being a new member, because I was.
You actually can, when they vote on it, you're allowed to vote because you're approving of the process, so.
Okay. I wasn't actually here, but
Yeah.
But you were
I
here,
remember
so.
that.
Someone make the motion to approve minutes.
Second.
I'll move.
Okay,
Okay.
movement. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thursday or Friday, when can I have an hour or two?
Either one.
Neither one you
Either
do?
one.
Either one, do you have a preference? Tell me when, because then I'll make sure I get my homework done in time.
Let's finish this and we can chat that chat, right? Anything else?
When is our next meeting, and how often does this meet?
Once a month.
Okay.
And typically, it's the Tuesday between our city council meetings, so it's like the third.
First Tuesday?
No, it's like the third Tuesday.
Tuesday, sorry.
Tuesday,
Okay.
April 16th would be.
And I'm gonna assume that someone's always gonna send out like the agenda ahead of time.
Yeah, but please let me know, if anybody, I'll just put what, Tom,
Right, but that, I was more just
But-
thinking
but
about as
yeah.
a reminder that it's going to be happening.
Yeah.
I'll put it on my calendar, but.
Yeah,
yeah, it will. But, yeah. But if anybody has other things they wanna add, please let me know. And I'll just tell Tracy we're working on the survey, but, and like I told her, right now, there's no way we can spend resort tax money on carts.
it would take an election, which is,
And that's what I told her, so. And whether or not we end up asking for small changes for that type of stuff will depend on how the survey comes out, I guess. It's overwhelming that people want us to spend money on something that we can't, and,
yeah, and it's, the challenge that we have is obviously the balance, because if we, we have a lot that's already committed.
yeah,
And so you start moving some of that around,
it does.
and I think it bodes towards the thing that it's this big pot that doesn't have, that could just be spent wherever, right? But most of it's committed.
Yeah.
And so, figuring out, like, even trying to find some money to get the pool paid down quicker is challenging.
Well, basically, the only place it's gonna come from is, oh, look, we had a watershed year for resort tax.
Yes. And I think we'll still continue to see improvements there, but, some of the challenges stuff still keeps getting more expensive. All right, is that all? You wanna shut it down there on the Zoom?
Yep. Did you close it officially?
Yeah.